这次美国之行，从哈佛到 New Orleans， 像我对自己青春志向的某种，好像又是觉醒，又是重新的确认，这么一个过程。这次觉醒你会有更强的中国的意识，就是我处在一个什么样的视角和一个背景，我的社会最需要什么？可能我在20多岁的时候是模糊的对这一切感兴趣，其实你对中国的背景也并不清楚，其实完全是两回事情。他被认为是一个社群主义的一个代表人物，他的整个的思想成熟之后，82年写出第一本书之后，他这个之后的整个人生经历是跟整个的里根撒切尔这一套就是全球化和新自由主义这套兴起有关系的，他成为这样的一个浪潮的一个批评者。这个批评当然有他的很多道理嘛，但是就是很有趣这个过程。我们这一代，包括这2代中国人，是这个所谓的这个潮流最大的受益者。包括他在批评的是绩效，他的暴政。那中国一直是贤良选拔，对我们中国人很尊重所谓的科举制度，尽管它有各种各样的问题，不管它是不是单一，他仍然认为是这个社会流动性的一个重要的保证，而且可能某种上最公平的一个保证。所以我觉得这是不同的国家之间的差异吧。
The pandemic. In many ways, the pandemic highlighted inequalities that existed before the pandemic. A great many of us had the luxury of being able to work from home during the pandemic, to teach from home, to work from home, to write from home. Delivery workers, grocery store clerks, warehouse workers, truck drivers, nursing assistants, home health care providers, child care workers. Now, these are not the best paid or the most honored workers in our societies. But for a moment, during the pandemic, we called them essential workers. We applauded them at the end of the day. We put up signs thanking them. This could have been a moment for a broader public debate about how to bring their pay and recognition into better alignment with the importance of the contributions they make. But it didn't happen. The pandemic receded. We never really had that moment. And now we've gone back to business as usual.
So you think meritocracy is part of reason?
And I think the answer to that question is connected to the widening inequalities of recent decades, and also to the changing attitudes towards success that have accompanied the widening inequalities. Over the past half century, really, those who've landed on top have come increasingly to believe that their success is their own doing, the measure of their merit, and that they therefore deserve the bounty that the market bestows upon them, and by implication, that those who struggle, those left behind, must deserve their fate as well. It produces a kind of hubris among the winners and humiliation among the losers. It teaches the winners, if I believe that I achieved whatever I achieved through my own efforts, through my own doing, because everything was fair, then I'm likely to inhale too deeply of my own success, to forget the luck and good fortune that helped me on my way, to forget my indebtedness to those who make my achievements possible. And so this is what I call the tyranny of merit.
Bring Michael Jordan here, I'm sure you can get him, and have him come and defend himself about why he makes $31 million. And I think what you're going to realize is his life was a very, very tough one to get to the top, and that we are basically being the majority oppressing the minority in a different light. It's very easy to pick on him. Very easy.
Effort. You know what Rawls' answer to that is? Even effort depends a lot on fortunate family circumstances for which we can claim no credit. Psychologists say that birth order makes a lot of difference in work ethic, striving, effort. How many here, raise your hand, those of you here who are first in birth order? I am too, by the way. Mike, I noticed you raised your hand. If the case for the meritocratic conception is that effort should be rewarded, doesn't Rawls have a point that even effort, striving, work ethic is largely shaped even by birth order? Is it your doing, Mike? Is it your doing that you were first in birth order? So why should income and wealth and opportunities in life be based on factors arbitrary from a moral point of view? This way of thinking about success has deepened the divide between winners and losers. It has led the successful to look down on those who struggle, and it has led many working people who do not have meritocratic credentials of fancy university degrees to feel that the work they do is not valued, is not respected in the way perhaps it once was, to feel that in a highly technological, highly professionalized, credentialized society, that elites look down on them. This has always been present, always been part of the American story, but it's been, at least at times, kept contained underground at the periphery. The brighter ideals and aspirations predominated. When I was growing up, and through the 60s, for example, the civil rights movement, and the fight for racial justice, and the protest against the war in Vietnam, and the attempt to combat poverty with the Great Society. But from 2016, it became elevated with the presidency of Donald Trump. We've struggled more directly and more conspicuously, more frontally with the dark side, finding public expression.
On the stage now.
On the stage, public expression, rather than kept at the margins and at the periphery. And finding a voice in the media, and in social media especially. And now in a presidential campaign that will be a rematch of the one from last time. We've seen as a backlash against elites, especially against well-educated elites, professional elites. Donald Trump has been very effective at tapping into the grievances of people who feel they've been left behind and looked down upon.
Humiliation.
The politics of humiliation. And it's this sense of humiliation, I think, that opened the way for the politics of grievance that Donald Trump has been able to exploit. In the United States today, and in many parts of the world, is a politics of anger, resentment, and grievance without mutual recognition, without recognizing the value of the contributions that people make from different walks of life. We will not really begin to address the resentments that now afflict our politics and have accentuated some of the darkest strands in social life.
Even facing the same concept, like justice.
Yeah.
You see the difference between from different countries?
Yes, yeah. It's prompted me to reflect on why there are these differences when I encounter them. When I had these conversations with young people in China in the 2000s, what struck me was, first, they did have very strong pro-market moral intuitions, as I mentioned. And I would put a lot of examples to students and to the audience, asking them whether they think this or that social practice should be governed by money or by other norms. So I put questions like this. What struck me was the moral intuitions about buying and selling were similar in the US and China. In Eastern Europe, it was similar. In Poland, for example. Most European countries, it was quite different.
You think why? Why? Similar mentality?
I think it's because, especially in the early 2000s, that China had experienced, the young generation had grown up with the market reforms. And it had been a period of tremendous economic growth.
It's kind of freedom for them.
Yeah, it was an expression of freedom and rising affluence, but especially of freedom. But at the same time, they were looking for meaning that markets could not provide. And so the search for meaning persisted even after the market triumphalist moment. And I think that one of the reasons that people were drawn to the Justice book was this sense that there are moral meanings that lie beyond markets and beyond economics. What do you think?
Yeah, maybe we're facing two choices or different choices. We can't choose the best one. There are no best one. Just less evil. Just less evil one, maybe.
But I wouldn't regard these as closed alternatives. I would ask a different question. How is it possible to combine the benefits of market arrangements and technological innovations with sources of meaning, deliberation, dialogue, reflection that can answer to higher human purposes and ends? Our mistake is not to use markets to organize economic activities. Our mistake is not to hope that technological innovations will deliver real improvements to the way we live our lives. Our mistake is the tendency to think that markets and technology by themselves can define human purposes and ends. They can't. And when we put too much faith in them, when they become a kind of faith, almost a kind of religious faith, markets and technology, then we're bound to be disappointed. And when the disappointment comes, the disappointment may take harsh, dangerous forms.
So the situation is so complicated. What kind of solution we can provide? We try to build dialogue, but very difficult.
I think we need to focus less on arming people for meritocratic competition and focus more on contending with inequalities of income and wealth, but also inequalities of honor, recognition, and esteem. And this means we have to renew the dignity of work. We have to broaden our conception about what counts as a valuable contribution to the common good. And we need the kind of class-mixing institutions in civil society that will lead us to encounter one another, to be in one another's presence, not only on our phones, all the more so when our societies are divided and polarized, because the people we encounter tend to be people only like ourselves. We need to overcome that.
But every solution, every theory always has its own flaw.
Yeah.
So how about your solution, your you attack the meritocracy, but
Right.
maybe your book still has kind of flaw. Maybe you must overcome what kind of flaw it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what flaws have you identified? Let's start with that.
I don't know. Maybe too idealistic.
Too idealistic.
Yeah.
You think so?
I don't know.
That what I've just suggested is really too much to hope for.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that reducing inequality and renewing the dignity of work and creating a greater equality of condition and recognition will happen anytime soon. They're not easy projects to undertake. So I want to be realistic about that.
But do you think should philosophy be more responsible for the historical consequence or not? The idea and the reality. Russell, Hegel.
Yeah.
They talk about inequality, talk about the virtue, but the consequence may be this one.
Yes.
Yeah, extreme opposite.
Yes.
How do you see the paradox?
If one thinks, and I, as I do, that philosophy is always situated in the world, that philosophy should attend to the world, then philosophy cannot be indifferent, and the philosopher cannot be indifferent to the way in which various people or parties or movements implement philosophical ideas. So there's always an interplay between political practice and the philosophical ideas that inform it. And often they can go off the rails. They can go in very dark directions that the philosopher may never have wanted or anticipated. That's always a danger. That's one of the persisting dangers of philosophy. The part of Hegel that has led political practice astray in wrong direction, that teaches that history has a single ultimate destination, and that it takes a certain shape, that has contributed to some of the dangerous movements in history who may have been inspired by the idea that history points in a certain direction, and that it's our responsibility either to let history unfold or to help history unfold to reach that final destination once and for all. I think the phrase or the idea, once and for all, is a deeply dangerous idea. And I think it's at odds with the philosophical spirit of questioning, contesting, offering competing interpretations.
In your mind, in our time, which idea is the most dangerous idea in today's world?
I would say that the forces today that are most dangerous are the versions of religious fundamentalism or of hyper-nationalism or of ideological purity that all draw in one way or another on the idea that moral truths and human truths are singular, that there's only one way of interpreting our past, there's only one historical end or destination, there's only one true way of interpreting religious and spiritual traditions. Because what this misses, well, it leads to dangerous politics, but it also misses the deep pluralism of the human experience.
So how about the Silicon Valley philosophy? Is techno-driven ideology?
It's I would say it's a version of this, because the most extreme versions of Silicon Valley techno-utopianism, some have a more specific term of transhumanism or singularity, because they too think that history is on their side. They too think that as technology develops and as generative AI develops, we will be transcending the messy, contentious, pluralist human projects and arriving at a kind of singularity where perhaps our minds will meld with machines. And the very idea that going to the moon or to Mars is kind of a natural outgrowth of this way of thinking, where they can start anew. It's the ambition really to start from scratch with a clean slate, to begin anew, unfettered, uncomplicated by disagreement, contestation, challenge, dialogue, controversy, where they can start anew and build a society from scratch that is not, as they might see it, weighted down by the controversies that arise whenever human beings gather in society. So there is something, it's fantastical, but it's also dangerous and hubristic, because it implies that they are the avatars, they are the pioneers, the initiators of this new frontier that breaks free from the messy need to negotiate, to discuss, to disagree, which is essential to the human experience.
你什么时候开始感觉到，哎，中国经济开始明显的起飞了？
是南训的第2年，然后我就是在无锡去做那个墙纸的那个工作了。英国人在无锡的那个工厂，我带了一个很重的传真机，因为他要把所有的那个 design，那个设计图啊，就是要发给无锡的，安装一个传真。我花了大概3个星期，确实我失败了，我没有安装成功了，因为你要有一个电话号码要排队的，然后我不知道怎么查对的，所以到3个星期后，确实我就很没面子。但是发现很多人装电话类似这种东西的，我认为还是比较的怎么说前进的。然后我97年到了上海的一个安达新，那帮人就是超级优秀的。今天的阿里的董事长张勇，也就是我们那帮安达新的人其中之一。然后还有其他的，现在就做的比较好的，然后就慢慢就通过安达新的一些朋友们就开始认识的中国这种变化。我的一个好朋友在杜伦大学的，他学了1900年中国的一些诗歌都死了那些人，然后我就说你为什么要学这种东西？他说我也很有兴趣，我想知道那个人有没有受这个人的影响了，他是不是那个时候有没有在一起啊？你学这种东西的。我在做什么？我在做一些可以见得到一个历史时刻的一件事情的。I'm touching history 的这么一种感觉的。所以我就在想 how to 记录
啊。你当时就有这个？
因为我当时有一个中文老师的，是一个政法大学的一个女孩子的，然后她会每个星期给我准备一个课，然后我会提前1个星期跟她说请你帮我。今天讲一些中国娱乐，好，然后他会做一些语课，然后就是我们会一起聊天，关于中国娱乐的，还是中国美食的，然后有一次我就说好，中国企业家，他第2个星期回来1个人都没找到，我说那你怎么可能？你中国的 Richard Branson 去选，你应该知道的吧？中国的 Bear 我都不知道，然后我就把这个概念再跟我的安大新的朋友们就确认了，那帮人也是。今天可以看了还是蛮优秀的，他们都不能说不出来了，那我就感觉我有个事情可以做的。一个榜单是一个记录的方法。对，但是这个完全就改变了，
变了是吧？
但是那个友谊婚恋应该是在这里吧？
啊，
友谊，
那是友谊宾馆，那个是友谊，
那个就是嘛？
对，那就是。
对，我当过那个友谊宾馆的第1个广告，他们有一次请我们留学生到他那里吃饭，然后我们可以免费吃饭，然后到最后他们就拍了很多照片，一天，我应该给你找出来，当时那个广告，而且用了大概是20年，我不知道现在还有没有，我不清楚的。 就是我和我的一个同学的，我们俩在吃饭，像给人感觉就 very 高大上。我大概前年还是去年回来了，然后我带我太太和孩子们到人大，但是几乎认不出来了。我特别喜欢站在因为我们的那个留学生楼当时是海淀区最高的一个楼，可以看得很远的，现在应该是这边的最矮的楼之一吧。当时我特别喜欢站在那个楼顶，拿2个凳子上去了，跟我们同学的去聊天。
你们在一起聊什么呢？会，talking about future or
当时是那个第一次伊拉克战争的时候，然后都比较有好奇的。This big country, what is it doing? 然后，所以我是下午不参加课，我就下午做了一个 part-time job。
是做什么？
玄武公园。
宣武公园做什么？
有一个地方，有一个办公室做，这是在中国第一个 PR 公司的。那个时候的公关的概念，就是一个很负面的意思的。
对，
基本上是那些卡拉 OK 里面的小姐做公关的，那个时候的就没有一个公关概念的。
对
PR。
对。
然后就没有收到1分钱。但是比较开心，因为确实可以有更多的交流。
但那时候会有感觉，作为一个 foreign student， 会有那种 privilege 那种感觉强。
我们感觉非常有钱的。虽然不是有钱人，但是我记得我北大的一个朋友的，他就可能1年也就这么几十块钱可以花了。我每一次是我请他鱼香肉丝、宫保鸡丁，
对，
差距还是挺大的。
现在中国留学生，他们很多有钱人立刻就买了房子去读书。
但现在我应该是完全倒过来了。
对，totally change。
哦，你找到了那本书，厉害厉害。
我是这一年做记者，做商业记者的，所以
这个我好久没看过。02年，你看。
对，02年。
你看，我记得很多。孙光新，我记得他当时我去了新疆，他给我印象特别深刻的。因为他是一个军人出身。然后军人出来以后，因为那边汉族比较少，但是爱吃鱼，但是乌鲁木齐离海比较远的，
对，没有，
所以开了一个鱼餐厅，然后开的比较成功，然后后来俄罗斯苏联，就出问题了，91年，然后在那边就是买了一些石油的装备，然后又完全改了。然后就变成房地产，然后就很好玩。
就 surfer， 他不断的有浪
抓机会，很快，确实厉害的不得了。
你记得那个时候中国社会的气氛是什么呢？对钱是什么态度呢？是一个
钱怎么态度的？最起码就是没有今天这种财富透明度。比如说我，这个人我记得，许荣茂。我当时我在。上海看到有一个广告，世贸滨江就是在上海很有名的一个楼盘，它的广告叫68888888，然后我印象很深刻的，我就说，谁能买得起这个电话号码，应该是可以上榜，所以，然后我找到了，我就是打电话过去的，然后呢，打电话过去以后发现。找不到他们这里的，但是知道是一个福建的老板，给他们福建的总部打电话，终于发榜的前2天就找到了他们了，他好像排到前10名了，印象也蛮深刻的，陈丽华就女首富了，
对，
全球白手起家女首富，这个是后来才知道的，这是很好玩的，很多好玩的东西，很多好玩的东西。
你当时想过中国企业家的这种对你们的这种信任也好，或者不信任也好，最初做榜单困难点是什么呢？现在想起来，
我是多年来很多人就跟我们讲，哎呀，我们中国人不爱露富。好吧，我就说了，好吧，那你因为我不认为这是一个中国特色，我这是全球差不多的吧。当然我说，那你怎么帮我解决的？全球买高档汽车买的最多的是在哪儿？在这儿。全球买那个高档手表最多的是在哪儿？在这儿。全球买最多的高档红酒、白酒在哪儿？都是在这儿。确实是有心理矛盾。我这个心理矛盾我是这样子理解的。你自己还是很自豪。因为你再怎么样，你是万分之一的还是百万分之一的成功，其实是相当的 lucky， 不容易。所以这块儿你应该特别的自豪。其实你会到全球，基本上没有一个人愿意把他的财富放在阳光之下，但是他认为放在阳光之下可以帮他放大，所以才愿意上市的。我今天发了榜，有一个人就说我不愿意上榜。你把名字拿掉，我说没办法，你是上市公司的，谁都能估算你的股份，你的股份就这个企业的20%几，这个企业值100块钱，你就22块钱，我就，你懂我意思吗？就你在公开场地，你就可以把自己放大，但是同样你要有这个眼光。
我觉得中国的环境可能更复杂一点吧。
我不认为。
你不认为啊？
我不认为。因为我自己学了历史的，这跟历史有关系的。我记得我有一次我在海淀那边的，就是往那个友谊宾馆走路的时候，就是我跟一个同学，一个中国人在一起，然后我们看了一个高档车，我说啊，你以后你应该开个他，我是给他开玩笑的，其实我就没说什么，然后他很严肃的回头对我说 ，no， 我不会的。我说为什么？因为那些车都是绿的、蓝的、白的。绿的是跟军队有关的，蓝的是跟海关有关的，白的是跟什么务工还是这种东西有关的，这是国家的。所以作为一个老百姓，我不可能做一个开这么一个车的，而且我本来工作都是分配出去的，所以是不可能的。
对，那个时候大家不愿意谈论金钱的，包括对钱也觉得跟自己没有那么多的关系，他的人生就会很固定的上班。
但是真的是在92年就开始了，这个气氛完全不一样的。actually 真的是很好玩的。我听到的新疆人就跟我讲，在新疆创业者的都跟我讲，他们会坐火车到深圳去买什么电子产品啊，然后把它带回那边，然后那边就是买高价，西安的、成都的。当然，上海的、北京都在跟我说，然后就是第一桶金就是慢慢从这里就来了。
深圳就像我们的中国的 The West 西部一样 ，Gold Rush 去。
Yeah, it was a gold rush. It's kind of interesting. But 这些故事我觉得挺值得说，挺值得记录。
那如果从第一份榜单到现在这个20年，如果划分这些企业家或者说不同的阶段的话，你觉得能分成哪几个阶段呢？
第一批是做贸易的，然后第二批是做海南，然后第三批可能做房地产，然后第四批可能就是开始做制造业的和出口，早年的网络，等等这方面，走到今天的是这几个阶段的。我的深刻的一种感觉的是这样子的，就是如果我们要写企业家历史，这帮企业家肯定会超过了第一批洛克菲勒、摩根、卡耐基的企业家的，他们的规模其实会做的有可能还要大了，因为目前还年龄也不是特别大了。然后我另外一个深度感受得到，你现在到大学生去接触这些4年级啊、3年级的，很多人就是有个创业梦想，然后就觉得说不定我也可以成那个下一个喜茶的聂允成，才29岁45个亿的，不像90年，就是你的梦想就可以放大。
包括他们不同的 generation 之间的这种变化大吗？比如说喜茶这样的小伙子，年轻一代 20 something， 他们跟之前的，比如20年前，他们的这个 mentality 差别大吗？
我早年这是美国人问的最多的一个问题是，中国这些企业家，你的上榜企业家有什么共同点？第一诚心，第二勤奋，第三务实。然后最近我又做了一遍， 然后我发现第一创新，第二就是资源整合，就包括资金啊，包括你的合伙人，第三速度，然后你比不过速度，诚信还在，只不过排到后面一点，务实，就是现在你用人家的钱就不用那么务实了，就是勤奋。那我估计这个是不说了，当然大家都几乎所有的企业家都勤奋了。
那你觉得中国企业家的这种问题在哪里？它的不好的一面是什么？
缺点的话，一个人群缺点不好说了，但就几个发现。第一，我们现在发现这些80后的上榜企业家的，几乎都是来自中国的最大的名校的，清华、北大、复旦、交大。上这些学校，我觉得越来越重要了。第二个发现，中国的女企业家很特别的。我们一直研究这个女企业家，研究了从06年当那个九龙之夜的那个张英当首富的那年，她是中国全球白手企业家的最成功的女企业家，全球的 Top 10最成功的 Top 100个最成功的女企业家的白手企业家的，可能70个来自中国的，但是他们的年龄现在基本上都是60后、50后。90后、80后几乎没有的。中国的女的80后的企业家，这个比例是远远低于张英这一代的。how to 理解是我的一个重要的工作。有可能现在的80后，我觉得是脑子确实比当时的创业者要大，因为你现在这个市场的竞争对手都多，所以你要在这个时候去成功的，其实不像以前那么容易。你需要一个大一点的脑子的，就是这几个学校筛选出来，你的成功还是不是成功的。然后小康社会来了，所以这些女企业家没有这个创业的动力，像可能20年前那帮人。这可能不是一个中国企业家的问题，就是可能不是一个人物的问题的。但是这个点到底在哪儿？可能就是到最后就一句话。我认为我一直问这个问题，就是这是一个历史偶然，还是这是一个必然？今年我就说了一句话，就是5年内，中国应该会有个10几个万亿级的企业家。然后如果你就把它当一个胡人说了，那就没什么事情。但是如果你再想一想，基本上可能性还是蛮大的。黄峥的速度是不可思议，真的不可思议的。你想一想，一个成立才5年，创造了2000亿人民币，这个速度是，绝对是一个世界第一。王兴的财富就这1年就是涨了3、4倍的，这速度的快。当然，这件事情也不是一个中国特色的。你像那个伊隆马斯克，也就是往万亿级人民币的走了。亚马逊的 Jeff Bezos 也差不多到了，所以可能5年内的世界有可能都会有个20、30个万亿级企业家的，这是一个创造一个新的思考。你说这些人值不值得有那么多钱？我最近一直在思考这个问题的，就我